In this video, we are going to solve Leetcode problem of the day, and the problem is question number 3394. Check if grid can be cut into sections. Now, since the problem description is too big, let me take you to the drawing pad and explain you what is the problem here. See, in this particular problem, we are given two inputs, n and rectangles. Here, n is an integer which is representing the size of our graph or grid. So 5 means that our grid is 5 by 5. Okay, as you can see in the diagram, we have a grid, or you can say we have a graph of size 5 by 5. So we have a bigger square of size 5 by 5, and we have few rectangles also given in the input. The rectangle's data is a two-dimensional data, and every data inside a rectangle is another list. This list has four elements. This particular data is representing some rectangles in our grid. And how are we going to create our rectangles? Using these coordinates. In this particular data, the first two coordinates are representing the lower left corner of our rectangle, and the last two coordinates are representing the upper right corner of our rectangle. So 1 comma 0 means 1 is x axis coordinate, 0 is the y axis coordinate, 5 is the x axis coordinate, and 2 is the y axis coordinate. Here 1 comma 0 is this point, and 5 comma 2 is this point. So we are going to take these points and create a rectangle. So this is our first rectangle represented by the first data. We have another rectangle 0, 2, 2, 4. So 0 comma 2 is one of the x and y coordinates. So 0 comma 2 is this point, and the next coordinate is 2 comma 4, which is this particular point. So this is going to create another rectangle, and we have two rectangles now. We have another data 3 comma 2 and 5 comma 3. 3 comma 2 is this point, and 5 comma 3 is this point. We can form a rectangle, and this is the third rectangle in our grid. And again, this is the fourth rectangle, which is this one. So this is what the input is. Now let us see what is the output. The output is a boolean. Okay, that's first thing. It can be either true or false. And when can it be true? Let us understand this. See, what we need to do in this particular problem is we need to cut our grid into three parts, and the cutting will be done in a particular rules. There are certain rules and we need to follow those rules. But the first thing is we can either cut the grid vertically, or we can cut the grid horizontally. Right now you can see we have two cuts in our grid, cut number 1 and cut number 2, and these are horizontal cuts. Okay, and there can be a possibility that we can cut it vertically as well if we follow the rules. Okay, so let us try to understand what are the rules, and if we are able to cut our group either horizontally or vertically and divide our grid into three groups, then we are going to return true. But if we cannot divide them into three groups, then we are going to return false, right? So that's the simple concept. That's what the output is all about, true or false. But what are the rules? These are important. Okay, the first rule is one rectangle rule. It means that every section should have one complete rectangle, at least one complete rectangle. So right now you see we have two cuts, right? Cut number 2 and cut number 1. So we have like three groups right now. The first group, this is the second group, and this is the third group. We have two rules, one rectangle rule and no overlapping rule. Let us focus on this one rectangle rule. One rectangle rule means every section, the first, second, and the third, will have at least one complete rectangle. So you can see the first section is having this rectangle completely. The second section is having two complete rectangles. So since we have to have at least one, two will be fine. And the third section is also having one complete rectangle, right? So first rule is fine. The second rule is no overlapping. Okay. So you cannot overlap means one rectangle cannot be the part of two groups at the same time. If we make a cut at this point, point number 3, if you cut it here, you will find that this particular rectangle is being shared by two groups. Now the first observation to make is, if you are making a cut horizontally, the first observation to make is, when we are making a cut horizontally, then the value of x will not matter. The reason is, we are making a cut at the y-axis. For example, y is equal to 2 and y is equal to 4. These are the 2 points where we made our cut and divided our grid into sections. But the value of x is always 0 here, right? 0 at this point and 0 at this point. So the value of x is not going to matter when we are making a horizontal cut. Okay, so we can mark that when there is a horizontal cut, value of y is all that matters. And when we are making a vertical cut, for example, this or this or this, don't worry about the rule breaks. Just focus on the fact that we are making a vertical cut. And when we are making a vertical cut, we are making the cut at x equal to 1, 2, 3, but y is always equal to 0, right? The value of y is not going to contribute anything when we are working with the vertical cut. So this is all about the x. And after we have found the fact that we need to cut vertically or horizontally, so we found that we can either cut it using the data of x or the data of y, and they are not dependent on each other. Okay, so we need to process the data of x and data of y separately and see if either of them can form three or more groups. So we have this intuition, we have this logic available to us. Now let us try to understand how can we proceed further. So the next thing is, since we know that we have to process the data of x and data of y separately, we will process both of these data, right? So let us try to do for x as of now. In this example, cutting it at y equal to 2 and y equal to 4 is the correct answer. But let's try to focus on the x as of now. Let us try to understand why x is not the correct answer. So for that, so for each of the rectangles, extract the value of x coordinates. For example, in this particular data, the data is 1, 0, 5, 2. Here, 1 and 5 are the coordinates of x, right? 0 and 2 are the coordinates of y. So we are not going to see them. So let's extract the coordinates for each of the rectangles. For the first rectangle, we have value as 1, 5. For the second rectangle, it will be 0, 2. For the third, it will be 5, so, 5. And then it will be 0, 4, right? 0, 4. So these are the data of x. And now we are going to make use of these points. See if we can make some vertical groups in our graph or grid such that it forms three groups. First of all, let us draw a line. And this line is going from 0 to 5. The reason is the n is equal to 5. Okay, that's the maximum we can go. What's the first point? Well, before you start processing this data, the data number 1 to 5, first of all, we are not going to process this data. We are going to process 0, 2. And the reason is we need to process our data sequentially. So 0, 2. Okay. So 0, 2 means that this is the point 0. This is the point 2. So when we mark the point 0, 2 in our graph or in our line, we will know that this is the one group we can form as of now. Okay. By cutting a line vertically at point number 2. Okay. If I cut a line at point number 2, I can form one group if I just have this data 0, 2. Now the next point is 0, 4, because if we try to process it in order, 0, 2 come first and 0, 4 come next. 0, 4 will say that, hey, this is the point 4, and according to 0, 4, it can form one group from 0 till 4. Okay. Now we have a new information. Earlier we had an information that from 0 to 2 we can form a group. From 0 to 4 is what we can form one group, right? So this new information is overlapping with the previous information. And if we combine both of these information, we will know that from 0 to 4, we will just form one group. Okay, that's the complete information after processing these two data. Okay, now let us try to process the next data. The next data is going to be 1, 5. Okay, so what's our current information? Our current information is from 0 to 4, we can form one group. The next information is I have to go from 1, right, and go till point number 5, right, 1 to 5. And 1 to 5, I can just form one group. If I try to break them in between, then it is a overlapping issue and we cannot form more than one group from 1 to 5. Okay, so now we have another information. Let us see so the existing information is from 0 to 4, I can form one group. That's the information we had. Now the new information is from 1 to 5, we can form one group, right? Now if you combine both of these information, you will find that starting from 0 and going till 5, we can only form one group. We cannot form more than one group, right? This is because we are starting from this point, right, going till this point. That was the earlier information, 0 to 4. Now we are starting at 1, which is somewhere in the middle of 0, 4, and we are going till 5, right? So both of these are overlapping, and just to satisfy them, we will say we will start from 0 and go till 5, and we will only form one group. We will not cut in between. Now the next point is we also need to process the information 3, 5, and now based on the current information 0 to 5, 5 is one group. 5, does it provide you any extra information? No, because we already know that 3 to 5 is between the range of 0 to 5, right? So this is the range of 3 to 5, starting from 3 and going till 5. But we already know, okay, from 0 to 5 we can just form one group, and this range is inside us. So hey, you cannot form another group 3 to 5 or 0 to 5. we can just form one group from 0 to 5. So now we know that we cannot cut our rectangle or our grid into three sections using x coordinates. Okay, so we at least are sure that using x coordinate we will not have the answer, and using x the answer is false. But let's try with another information, that is the y coordinates, right? We have failed with x, but we still have the option of y available, right? So let us grab the y coordinates. So what are the y coordinates? 0 comma 2, so 0 comma 2, and 2 comma 4, this is 4. 2 comma 4 is another coordinate, 2 comma 3 is one of the coordinates, and 4 comma 5 is another coordinate. Let us do the same thing. Let us draw them in a line. So we have a line, right? And we'll go from 0 to 5. Okay, let's form them like 1, 3, and 4 and 5. Now let us process each of these points sequentially. So the first point is going to be 0 comma 2. So let's form a line from 0 comma 2. So 0 comma 2, we can just form one group. The next point is going to be 2 comma 3, not 2 comma 4. It should be 2 comma 3, because we are processing sequentially, right? Now we know that till the point number 2, starting from 0, we can form one group. And this new information 2 comma 3 is telling us from 2 to 3 we can form another group, one more group, because this is not overlapping, so it can form one group and it can form one group. We can cut at 2 and cut at 3 to form two groups. But the next information is 2 comma 4, and it says that you need to start from 2. Let us start from point number 2 and go till 4. You can form one group here. So the earlier range of 2 comma 3 is now 2 comma 4. Okay, so we have information like from 0 to 2 we can form one group, so 0 to 2, and from 2 to 4 we can form another group. Again, as of now we can form two groups. Okay, the range is 0 to 2 and 2 to 4. And next is 4 to 5. Now we can form another group from 4 5. We can form one more group, 4, starting from 4 and going till 5. We can form one more group. So right now we can form a total of 1, 2, 3 groups, and these three groups are not overlapping with each other, right? So since we can form three groups, we can say that, hey, using y-axis, using y coordinates, we can cut our grid in two parts horizontally and form three groups. So yes, y is saying yes, so we will return true. And if I show you without this graph, if I show you with technically, you will see that we had a range 0 to 2 which said that, hey, I can form one rectangle. We have another range 2, 3 now, processing it sequentially, so 2 to 3 will come first. So 2 to 3 says that I can form another range 1, right? So combine both of these informations from 0 to 3, we can form two groups, right? Now the new information is 2 to 4. The 2 to 4 says that I can form one group. So 0 to 3 is 2, and 2 to 4 is another group I can form. So using 2 to 4 we can form one group. So when we combine both of these information, we will come to know that from 0 to 4, we can just form two groups. This is because this range is overlapping. Okay, it will not contribute to any extra group. And the last one is 4 to 5. Okay, so the current information is 0 to 4, two groups. New information is from 4 to 5, we can form one more group. Combine these information from 0 to 5, I can form three groups, and 3 is what we need. And even if we can create more than three groups, our answer will be true. And the reason is, if we can create more than three groups, for example, let us say we are creating more than three groups. Okay, forget about the rules. Let us say an example: group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4. So this will also be true. The reason is, if we can form four more than three groups, then 1, 2, and then we are not going to make another cut. We will say this is our complete third group. Okay, this is why even if we can form more than three groups, the answer is true. So let me jump back to the code editor and start writing the code. So let us create the x data. So x data is the index number 0 and index number 2 from our data. So x data is going to be like this. For data rectangles, we are using list comprehension, and we are going to assign our data as a tuple, data of 0 and data of 2. This is the x data. Copy this and create the y data. Y data is the index number 1, and we have the x data and y data ready. We need to sort these data so that we can process them sequentially. X data dot sort and y data dot sort. Once the sorting is done, what we can do is we can count how many groups x data can form and how many groups y data can form. So let us create a function for that. Def div count. and inside this we will pass some data, and this will return us the count. Let us store the count x. So x count is going to be div count, and we will pass the x data, and again y count is going to be div count. We'll pass the y data, and we have to return true if any of this value is more than or equal to 3, right? So return x count is more than equal to 3, or y count is more than equal to 3, right? So now our logic is almost complete apart from the main one, that is we need to implement this div count function. So first of all, let us initialize our count to be 0. Let us say the last end we found is last equal to -1. Okay. Now we are going to process our data for starting to end in the data, right? We need to check if the new start is more than or equal to the last, right? The last time we ended at something, the next one should be more than or equal to it. And then only we can say that it will form another group. So if it is forming another group, then count will increase and the last value will get updated with the new end. And if it is not true, then again we need to update the last value. The last value will be the maximum of end or the existing last value. And at the end, we are going to return the value of count. That is going to be our complete code. Run the code and the sample test cases are going to be passed. So let us check. Yes, the sample test cases are passed. We can submit this code and all the test cases will pass. So yes, you can see all the test cases are passed, and this particular solution is efficient as well. It's very clean. The code is very clean and pretty efficient. So you can see the complete code right now on the screen. So that's it for this video, guys. And if this video helped you to understand the problem and understand the approach, then make sure that you hit that like button. And I will see you guys in the new video.